Hello everyone, I welcome all of you to my lecture sessions on biochemistry for pharmacy students. So we have been discussing about enzymes for the past 3 classes. So in this session we will discuss in detail regarding factors influencing enzyme action. So especially this topic is very important for pharmacy students and those students who are into life sciences also. As far as a living being is concerned, both the health and disease status of a particular organism is actually decided by the activity of an enzyme. If all the enzymes present in various biochemical pathways, if they are happening at appropriate rate and in coordination with each other, that results in health. Or if any kind of imbalance is happening, that results in a disease. So that's the reason why by simply understanding various factors which can influence enzyme activity, we can study in a better manner both health and disease status of a living being. So that's why this is a very important topic. So please pay attention. So let's move ahead and see what is there in this lecture session. So various factors influencing enzyme action. So before initiating the actual topic, I just would like to give you a few key points which can help you understand these concepts very easily. So basically, an enzyme is a catalyst. Is it a regular catalyst? No. So let's say in case of a classical enzyme substrate related reaction, enzyme and substrate, they come together and form an enzyme substrate complex, and this will ultimately be transformed into a product. Okay, the product will be released into the solution. So here, as far as enzyme is concerned, it is a biocatalyst. So it shows it catalyzes a particular reaction, and chemically an enzyme is a protein. An enzyme recognizes a substrate and holds onto it. For recognition, enzyme need to have appropriate three-dimensional shape and size. Okay, so here, so basically to understand various properties of enzymes and how they can be influenced, chemically it is a protein. Okay, chemically it's a protein. So what is its job? Its job is to recognize a substrate and convert it to a product, and in that process it is acting as a catalyst. So three-dimensional shape of a protein is very important as far as recognition of a substrate is concerned. So this is what we have seen in lock and key theory, okay, where the three-dimensional shape and size of the, let's say if this is the enzyme, okay, so and this is actually the substrate, this is the substrate, okay, so both need to have some complementarity as far as shape is concerned. So that's the reason why three-dimensional shape of a protein, especially at the catalytic site, is very important for enzyme activity. Second one is it is acting as a catalyst. How it is acting as a catalyst? After recognition of the substrate, the enzyme physically assists the substrate to get itself transformed into a product. Means the enzyme will have partial flexibility. Okay, through this flexibility, enzyme can move either in this direction or in this direction or any other way. It facilitates either bringing two substrates together to form a bond or rip apart a molecule to break it into two. Okay, so this is the way. So semi-flexibility is needed. This is what we have seen in induced fit theory. Okay, this is what we have discussed in the last 3 classes, induced fit theory. So an enzyme is a protein. Proteins will have three-dimensional shape and size in which it will remain functional. And especially at the active site, it need to have complementary shape. Not only the physical shape but also complementary environment over here, both in the chemistry side also. Means let's say if you zoom this area, if this is the enzyme and this part is your substrate, let's say both are to be recognized. One is the shape which is going to help you, and the second one is substrate is not a dead molecule, it will have charge distribution. Let's say here if you have positive charge, maybe an ammonium or something like that, then you need to have a complementary negative charge on this side at appropriate place so that they can come together and form an ion-ion type of interaction. Okay, so in this way, the lock and key theory helps us the significance of three-dimensional shape and size at the especially active pocket. Second one is the induced fit theory helps us understand why flexibility is needed for catalytic activity of an enzyme. So here, because it's a protein, what are the factors which can influence three-dimensional shape and size of a protein? Enzyme is an albumin, or sorry, it's a globular protein. So globular proteins tend to coagulate, or okay, they get denatured upon treatment with one temperature, second one is pH, third one is ions, etc. Okay, so like this, these things which we have seen in maybe at 10th class or otherwise in +2 level, up to +2 level, these things what we knew already. So because it's a protein, so these are the factors which can influence the three-dimensional shape and size of a protein, can directly influence the activity of an enzyme. Further, because this is a simple chemical reaction, concentration of both enzyme as well as substrate both can influence the rate of reaction. And then in any chemical reaction, sometimes we needed some assistance from other chemicals. Okay, they are what we call them as accelerators or activators, or they help us both in the chemistry as well as they help us in achieving a chemical transformation. So these are what we call them as activators or accelerators. And if any chemical is there, if it alters the capacity of an enzyme, catalytic capacity of an enzyme, we call them as inhibitor. Okay, we call them as inhibitors. So presence of accelerators or activators, or presence of inhibitors, concentration of enzyme, concentration of substrate, temperature, pH, and presence of certain ions are all the factors influencing enzyme action in brief. Okay, so I hope you understood the concept over here. So let's move ahead. So these are the factors that we just now we have seen them: substrate concentration, temperature, pH, concentration of enzyme, presence of inhibitor, presence of activator, and then presence of water. Okay, so these are the things which are significantly going to influence the activity of an enzyme. Now let's see one by one. First one is the substrate concentration. Obviously, in any kind of a chemical reaction, if the input number of moles of input, if you increase, it should reflect in rate of reaction positively. It should influence the rate of reaction. But in case of an enzyme catalyzed reaction, if we keep the enzyme concentration as constant and if we enhance the substrate concentration, then in the initial phases you will observe increase in the rate of reaction, and it slows down to reach a saturation point okay, over here, beyond which an enzyme fails to show any more catalytic activity. So it is because an enzyme physically assists the substrate to get itself transformed into a product. Okay, this is the enzyme, here we have the substrate, and both come together, and then what will happen? So the substrate gets chemically transformed into a product, and the product will go out. Okay, so this is the substrate, this is the enzyme, and substrate became a product. For this entire exercise to happen, it takes some time. Okay, for an enzyme, this time it takes for conversion of a substrate into product remains constant. Hence, every enzyme will have its own capacity to convert a fixed number of substrates to products within a given period of time. So within a given period of time, if you enhance the substrate concentration and observe its rate of reaction within a stipulated period of time, then all enzymes, if they got occupied with a substrate, addition of more substrate does not reflect in productivity. So that's the reason why occupancy once the enzyme gets saturated with the substrate, then it shall fail to show more catalytic activity. Okay, it has reached its maximum capacity. So this is the reason why enzymes are saturable, and hence substrate concentration, if you are increasing, it will go into a parabolic pathway. Okay, so it reaches a saturation point like this. Okay, so friends, I hope you understood the role of substrate concentration in enzyme activity. So we'll take the second one, that is temperature. So usually in organic chemistry or any other chemistries, temperature usually is considered as a positive stimulator of a positive regulator of rate of reaction. It is because when temperature is enhanced, okay, when you pump in so much of heat energy into the system, what will happen? It will reflect in a rate of collisions, increased rate of collisions between molecules. So this obviously reflects in rate of number of effective collisions. Okay, so number of effective collisions, when they are increased, it should reflect in increased rate of reaction. Okay, it increases rate of reaction. So it is like that. So this is what we normally observe in regular laboratory organic chemical reactions. But whereas in case of enzyme mediated reactions, surprisingly, all enzymes, they show optimal catalytic activity at a particular temperature. All these protein or enzymes, they show optimal catalytic activity at a particular temperature. We call it as optimal temperature for the enzyme. Optimal temperature for the enzyme. So the reason why activity is going down when you are increasing or decreasing the temperature from optimal temperature, so this we have to see. So when you are increasing the temperature, you should remember that an enzyme is a protein. Okay, so when you are enhancing temperature, so what is it that is going to happen? A protein gets denatured. So protein get denatured means what? So if an enzyme is there, its a three-dimensional structure is like this. Okay, so this three-dimensional structure is usually maintained via so many, okay, hydrogen bond interactions or non-covalent bond interactions. So many interactions will be there. So a network of interactions are going to help the protein attain a stable 3D conformation which is maintained normally at a particular temperature. So when you enhance the temperature, then that energy that is gained by the system will enhance the more and more of through vibrations, etc. the bonds over here gets broken, so thereby protein gets denatured. The three-dimensional structure of the protein gets altered. So if this is the active pocket, now in the denatured protein you don't find that active pocket. So unless you have appropriate three-dimensional structure at the active site, it cannot recognize and show the catalytic activity, recognize the substrate and show the catalytic activity. So that's the reason why beyond certain temperature, the protein three-dimensional structure is going to be altered, so that reflects in inactivity of the enzyme. So that is about the higher side of the temperature. So when you are going on the other side, then why should it lose the catalytic activity? So in the beginning, I told you that catalytic activity needs the enzyme to be semi-flexible. So that is what we call it as induced fit mechanism. Okay. So here flexibility means the enzyme need to have some internal energy which will be utilized to change its conformation from one conformation to another conformation. Let's say if this is the enzyme, then for the catalytic activity, if this hand is to move in this direction and this loop is to move in this direction, then the area in the middle need to have semi-flexibility, so that conformational flexibility helps in achieving this induced fit mechanism. So when you are reducing the heat content of the system, internal energy of the system is going to go down. Okay, so when you reduce the temperature, molecule will become, flexibility will be reduced. Okay, flexibility will be reduced. So that reflects in failure to show to catalyze. Failure to catalyze the reaction. So in that way, when you reduce the temperature, enzyme become inactive because it loses flexibility. When you increase temperature, the enzyme loses catalytic activity because it gets denatured. So thereby it loses its three-dimensional shape and size. It fails to recognize the substrate. So this is the way how temperature significantly influences enzyme activity. Especially this fact is made to use in several areas of pharmaceutical drug development as well as in industry. Especially in case of natural products, the natural products are stored at lower temperatures because when you obtain any product from nature, obviously there is a possibility of association of all these chemicals with enzymes. Okay, when you cut down a leaf or a tuber or a root or anything like that, that will obviously contain so much of enzymes. Hence, by storing those materials at low temperatures, you keep the food material in a refrigerator, so that prevents food degradation. Okay, that is a very simple example over here. So upon heating, food materials containing these enzymes, the enzymes that are present in food material get denatured. So thereby shelf life of food material can be enhanced. I gave you a few examples over here. So one of them is to let you know the susceptibility, temperature thermal susceptibility of various enzymes and rate of denaturation. Okay, so when you take for example potato tuber, it contains lipase, lipoxygenase, phenol oxidase and peroxidase. These are the four major enzymes that you will find in potato tuber. So upon heating, lipase is the first enzyme to get denatured in a very limited range. Okay, very narrow range. Lipase gets denatured, lipase will be inactivated. Whereas in case of peroxidase, so it starts degradation at approximately 90 degrees centigrade and it takes about up to 140 degrees centigrade, it still shows its activity. So that's the reason why all enzymes are not susceptible to temperature. They have their own degrees of susceptibility. Okay. So the third and one of the very important factor which controls enzyme activity is pH. So first we need to understand why pH should control the enzyme activity. Let's say I'm going to show you a graph. Just like in case of temperature, enzymes show maximum activity at a particular pH, which is what we call it as optimal pH value for a given enzyme. Every enzyme will have its own optimal pH. Why should an enzyme respond to pH changes? That is what we need to understand. So just now we have seen in the last slide that if this is the enzyme and we have one substrate over here, so both are as far as shape is concerned, they are complementary. Okay, they have some complementarity. So shape complementarity is sufficient? No, definitely not. So for recognition, let's say if I am zooming this particular area, okay, so this is the enzyme surface and we have here the substrate. Okay, this is the substrate. And when these two are coming together, especially when here negative charge is there, along with the shape complementarity, charge complementarity will also be there. So on this side you will have positive charge. So thereby they will interact appropriately. So appropriate orientation, strong binding, everything can be seen only in this situation. So on this side, let's say if you wanted to have positive charge, how it can have a positive charge? So if it has an amine or a heterocycle, etc., nucleophilic nitrogen, if it is there, it will be protonated at appropriate pH. So thereby ammonium ion is going to be formed. So this ammonium ion maintains its positive charge at a particular pH. It all depends upon its pKa value. So in the same way, in case of substrate also, you need to have a negative charge. Means you need to have a functional group like COO minus or phenolic O minus. Okay, so a phenoxide ion. So for generation of this one also, we need to have appropriate pKa value. So outside pH, let's say if you are moving more and more towards acidic side, so these two will become COOH and OH. Okay. Though these two are polar groups, they are not as polar as their corresponding ions, see carboxylate ion or phenoxide ion. So thereby they cannot effectively interact with this positive charge. Okay. So if you go on the basic side, these two ions will be there, whereas the positive charge will be gone. Ammonium will become amino group in highly basic environment. So thereby at a catalytic site, this amino group fails to tightly bind onto the counter ions that are formed on the other side. So that's the reason why at appropriate pH you will find positive charge on active pocket as well as counter ions on the opposite ions on the substrate also. So that's the reason why at optimal pH only you will find a particular enzyme showing optimal activity. Okay. So I have some examples over here to show you the diversity that we can observe as far as enzyme activity and pH are concerned. So this is one very important example, that is pepsin. Pepsin is produced in your stomach and this is a protein, and pepsin shows optimal activity at pH 2, means acidic pH, that too in stomach you will find acid being secreted that helps maintain pH 2. This is a protease enzyme. And I have here one more example, that is chymotrypsin. It is secreted from pancreas and released into the duodenal region, so that it will be mixed with the gastric contents and show its activity in the small intestine. So here the activity, chymotrypsin shows its optimal activity at pH 7.8. So pH 7.8 is achieved at the farthest end of the small intestine. Farthest end of the small intestine, where you will find pH value 7.8, means slightly on the alkaline side. So here you can see both the enzymes are doing same kind of job. Both are proteases. They break the peptide linkage so that they release simpler amino acids, tripeptides or simple amino acids. Okay, but both are responding to pH in a different manner. So here I have one more example here. See here, lipooxygenase 1 and 2, both are isolated from soybean. They convert linoleic acid to the corresponding oxidized products. So here lipooxygenase 2 is acidophile, whereas lipooxygenase 1 is completely on the alkaline side. So it acts to the maximum. It shows its maximum catalytic activity in the alkaline side. So friends, this is the way how every enzyme has its own optimal pH value for its catalytic activity. So here I just would like to extend this discussion with a small application. So in case of patients suffering from gastric acidity, they used to take antacids. Okay, if they take antacid tablet physically contains bicarbonates or alkaline substances, so thereby it neutralizes pH. It neutralizes acidic pH, so they will raise the pH of stomach contents. So if they raise the pH of the stomach content, what will happen? Pepsin is supposed to act at pH 2. Pepsin actually activates many of the enzymes that are supposed to participate in proteolysis. Hence, if the pepsin fails to show its maximum activity, so it affects the protein digestion pathways. Hence, the patient may suffer from indigestion. Okay, indigestion. So that's the reason why we need to be careful while taking antacids. We need to suggest the patients to be careful regarding the food material, whatever they are going to consume. Okay, so friends, I hope you understood the role of pH on enzyme activity and its implications in health and disease status.